So good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening to some of you. You're most welcome to this session, which is the third one of a series of what we called a learning journey, a learning lab, or virtual learning sessions. We do not have any name anymore, but hopefully we all know why we are here together. We have this session named Panel. The first session we had together last week was allowing us to first share experiences and then benefit from an update, especially on the core humanitarian standard sphere and the humanitarian standards partnership. Today, what we want is to discuss, to share views on a number of key topics, cross-cutting all what we are doing in the field around the project cycle and being related very strongly to what is our main topics through these sessions, meaning quality, accountability to affected populations, and safeguarding. And we will see that what we're going to discuss today is covering most of those so important areas that are of interest to all of us. So we invited a number of panelists, and we will have a lot of opportunities and discussions. Before we start, I would like to give the floor to Khurram to explain what will be the principles to run this session properly and to ensure that everyone can have a voice throughout these 4 hours. And we are very happy to say that ZOA for the Syria Joint Response managed to have a translator on board. We are well equipped, but then we have a few responsibilities we would like to highlight before we start. Over to you, Khurram. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, Sylvie. So, welcome everyone. Today's session is of 4 hours. Like Sylvie mentioned, we will be having different speakers and we will be sharing the whole plan with you shortly. The session will be recorded, and the purpose of the recording will be just to use for the reporting purpose and also to put it on our website, because most of the people who attend these sessions or who somehow miss this session want to have some insight on the discussion or on the debate that happened in the session. So I hope everyone is fine with the recording and is intended use. Secondly, we will request you to put your mic at mute when you are not speaking or when you have shared your opinion or point, so to just avoid background noises or background problems. You can put your video on depending upon the internet connection, but it is requested not to pin to the video, so everyone can see what is happening and who is speaking in the room. Then we have the interpretation or Arabic translation available today. For those friends and colleagues who are joining from Syria and want to hear the Arabic translation, they may go to the interpretation. From interpretation, they have to click Arabic and also click mute original audio. In this case, you will be able to only hear the Arabic translation and not the original English. Otherwise, if you don't put the original on mute, then you will be hearing both the voices. So thank you very much and welcome again. Thank you, Sylvie. Back to you.
Thank you, Khurram. Thank you very much. As we are going to discuss together and share experiences on our standards for quality, accountability, and safeguarding, I'd like to start here with recording what are our principles of conduct in such a meeting, and ensuring that we do keep it in mind at the time of respecting each other's in terms of opinions, views, where we come from, and the fact that this is not at all about discussing for example, politics, but we really are back to our humanitarian work and what is governing this work wherever we are. And the other point is, let's please keep in mind that everybody should have a voice, starting with us. So when we have the subgroups discussions, ensuring that those being a little bit more shy or invisible can still take the floor and share their views. We have translation, so I should be the first one maybe speaking a bit more slowly and ensuring that translation is functioning for our Arabic speaking colleagues. May I suggest that we all put the camera on, unless you would disagree to show yourself, which is totally fine, but just to say hello, because it's not easy not to be face to face, but just to say a big hi and maybe take a picture. And if you do not want the picture to appear, you can just take the camera off or tell this to Zainab. Who can we see? Yes. Hi. Hello. Can we see? Yeah. Excellent.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, afternoon. Some people are sharing the screen. So yeah, well done. Well done. You have a minimum of face-to-face meeting. Excellent. I would like to share the screen here and start with recalling that this is part of a learning journey on quality, accountability, and safeguarding. And we have here together with us two co-organizers, Community World Service Asia and ZOA, representing the Syria Joint Response as the coordinator. It's very interesting because you are about 40 participants coming from those two regions. 20 people coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, Japan, Korea. So it's really a high variety of country representation we have from Asia, mostly from Afghanistan and Pakistan. And we have the other half, the other 20 colleagues coming from Syria, through the Syria Joint Response, who is made of Dorcas, Oxfam, TDH Italy, ZOA, and for this section on quality and accountability, CORDAID, and local partners working in the different regions and hubs. We are very pleased that this initiative allowed for those two regions to come together on a common interest basis. There was a similar interest to work on quality, accountability, and safeguarding, and we decided to have joint sessions, which happened through last week and will go on this week. So I would like now to give the floor to Community World Service Asia first, and then ZOA, coordinating the Syria Joint Response, to introduce in few words who they are and how they've been involved in this process. So Zainab and Khurram, to start with, would you like please to take the floor?
Thank you, Sylvie. Hello, everyone. My name is Khurram Saeed, and I am working as Program Coordinator, Quality and Accountability with Community World Service Asia. Community World Service Asia is a Pakistan-based organization working in the Asia region. We are supporting organizations in promoting quality and accountability at their organization level and with their communities and networks in Asia. We also did some deployments in the past in different countries in Asia. Our main focus is strengthening the capacity of humanitarian development sector organizations who are working with the communities directly at the grassroots level, so they can better operate and can improve their work and enhance their quality and accountability in program policies and procedures. So Community World Service Asia is a member of Core Humanitarian Alliance and also the Sphere regional partner in Asia. So some of you are familiar with us and hopefully in future, in our future capacity enhancement interventions and initiatives, there will be colleagues from your organization as well. So we are also working with the focal points, quality and accountability focal points in the region, who are working on experience sharing, exchange of learnings and thought around quality and accountability. So happy to be part of this virtual learning series, and hopefully we will have some good experiences and good learnings from this series to be, and we will be sharing this with you and with other organizations working in the sector in Asia and in the region. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sylvie.
Thank you, Khurram, and the whole of Community World Service Asia team. Jan, you are with us to introduce ZOA and the Syria Joint Response. Thank you, over to you.
Certainly, thank you, Sylvie. I'm excited to see so many beautiful people online from different countries this morning or this afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Jan. I am with ZOA, and ZOA is a Dutch organization providing assistance from relief to recovery in about 14 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. And we are also the lead for the Syria Joint Response, which is funded by the Dutch MFA. Now, we believe that accountability and adherence to core humanitarian standards as equality is important for all the countries that we work in, but certainly also for the work that we do in Syria, also under the umbrella of the Syria Joint Response. And this is why we felt we should prioritize and allocate time to get a better understanding of what the standards are about, but also how we can adhere to them in the specific context of Syria. So that's how we embarked on this journey together, which this morning's session is part of as a means to learn together. And we're excited to learn together with, well, people working in similar contexts elsewhere in the world. So I'm very much looking forward, and I would like to thank CWS and also Sylvie for all the good work in collaborating with us on this. So thanks for that. Over to you, Sylvie.
Thank you very much, Jan. Again, welcome everybody. Can I ask you please to take a second to write in the chat your name, function, organization, and country of work, so we can record that from our end when we do our small report. So please, your name, function, organization, and country of work in the chat box. Thank you. Thank you. So let us start with good practice, which is to recall why we are here and what we want to achieve together today. So we do drive together in this path. What we want to aim is really to ensure that we do exchange and discuss around key topics, but that we do consider our practices. The idea is not to stay at the theoretical level, but really to dig into what are we doing, what are we able to do in some contexts, and how do we ensure that we look forward to improving this. And we want to contrast views and maybe think together on how can we innovate, how can we do better, but with a little bit of imagination. And for this purpose, we asked a number of panelists to join us and introduce key topics. This will stimulate the debates and the discussions we will have. But again, we want to go back to field practices. This is really, really the aim of today. So for all of you joining from these countries in Asia, in Syria, and sorry, I saw Nigeria join this morning. So from one part of Africa too, we really want to go back to what you are doing, what you are facing in terms of limitations, but also what are opportunities. and how we work from that point. And we will relate all those topics we will address this morning or this afternoon, depending on where we are. We will relate those topics to those standards, being the core humanitarian standard, sphere, or other standards from the Humanitarian Standards Partnership. And the tools they are suggesting or proposing to support the implementation at field level. And all this is coming through the project life, what we call the project cycle. So we have a lot to discuss, and I would like to highlight that there will be 2 rounds. The first one will take us through the 1.5 to 2 hours, upcoming 2 hours. And we will discuss here the importance of context and risk analysis, the do no harm approach. What is it about? How does it relate to the CHS? How is this an approach that is absolutely key to all humanitarian action? We will discuss capacity building and learning. What have we learned? What is happening? What is in place? How is the core humanitarian standard, the CHS Alliance, driving the strategy on capacity building and learning? And hopefully we will have a contribution from Shama, from Community World Service Asia, on strengthening local capacities, especially on quality and accountability. What is being done, for example, in Pakistan, in the Asian region, in a manner that is absolutely contextualized to some areas and some specific target audience, some specific communities. We will stop here for questions and answers opportunity and discussion with the whole group. And we will start again after that, discussing localization and equitable partnerships. I've been asked to put equitable in big. We want to truly discuss partnerships and how this is happening. And what could be maybe opportunities or innovations or ways to reinforce the equitable aspect. Finally, we'll have at the end of this round a very important presentation from the CHS Alliance on the verification scheme, including the self-assessment process. And maybe, who knows, the possibility to run some joint self-assessments. So this will be our first round. And the second one will allow us to dig into how do we ensure that we apply our humanitarian principles, even in complex emergencies. How do we stick to these principles and our ethics? And what are the tools in our hands? How can we cascade this at the field level in difficult contexts? We are talking about codes of conduct, community complaints and feedback mechanisms, and community engagement. How should all this be conducted and applied through a people-centered approach? And it's all about community engagement. We will follow with our colleague, Paul Véché, highlighting gender and empowerment. We have a lot of experiences from the Community World Service Asia, and Paul Véché is a champion on this, and we share some of her experience here. And we will end up with a very key aspect, which is dear to our work and which we want to emphasize here, which is the possibility to work jointly and collectively towards the application of the quality and accountability standards. How does that happen? How do we ensure that we do save energy and work even better when we do it jointly? I haven't put the word coordination, maybe in purpose, but joint and collective application is absolutely key, and we will explore some ways to do this. So these are the topics we want to discuss today, and all these topics are, of course, cross-cutting the implementation of the project, or the project cycle, as we call it, the project cycle or the humanitarian program and its management aspect. So we should keep in mind that, of course, we can have different phases depending on who we work with. Is it at organizational level with the project cycle, or global level with the program cycle, which is the blue one here? But anyhow, what we are discussing is the implementation through identification and assessment analysis. And we'll see here how, starting with the do no harm approach, we have this context analysis being absolutely key and driving into all the other phases of the project life. Going through design, formulation, mobilization of resources, planning, execution and implementation, monitoring and evaluation, and what we call the exit strategy. You will see that there is a red phase here in the project cycle named 0, that is the learning and preparedness phase. So let's keep in mind that while we discuss the project cycle management, we also want to highlight that a lot can be done at the preparedness phase and a learning phase, which is something we'll discuss very soon also together with Geneviève when she will present her thoughts on capacity building and learning and how it happens upfront. So this is a quick overview of an introduction, let's say, to our session today. And I would like to start with introducing the panelists for this first round and give the floor first to Corita Kobin from ZOA. She is the sector specialist peace building. And Corita, you will introduce Do No Harm and Do Some Good to us and underline the importance of context analysis from upfront. Then we will have Geneviève Sivogt from the CHS Alliance, the training manager of the CHS Alliance, presenting the capacity building and learning strategies. What has been learned, what is being done, what is the strategy for the upcoming years, and what have been the lessons from, I would say, a few decades back of training, even if it was not only with CHS Alliance, but with other initiatives too. Shama Mol, hopefully, will join us to introduce the strengthening local capacities on quality and accountability in Asia, especially in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And this is the first round of presentations we have. So I will stop here and give the floor to you, Corita. You're most welcome. And we are really, really eager to hear you introducing the Do No Harm approach and what it does entail. Corita, do you want me to put the slides on? Yes?
Okay, thank you. It's really my pleasure to be part of this session with people from so many organizations, so many countries. And indeed, as Sylvie already mentioned, so I am working as peace building and conflict sensitivity advisor for ZOA, and I had the privilege to visit Syria a few months ago, early December, where we had many meetings and also a workshop with ZOA staff specifically on this topic of do no harm. And I'm not at all an expert on Syria, but I am willing to share a bit about how we apply do no harm also ZOA-wide, and some applications to the Syria context.
Sorry, Corita, it's coming.
Yep, no worries.
Yes.
So what I'm planning to do is just to say, so maybe you can. Yes, so indeed, the third commitment of the CHS, it's about do no harm. And so the do no harm approach and conflict sensitivity, it links closely to the CHS. I think we can go to the Next slide and the next slide. Yeah, you can go to the next. Yeah, thank you. So as I said, it links clearly to the third commitment of the CHS, because actually do no harm, it's really about understanding the context. Where are we working? And then specifically the context with the relations, community dynamics, also conflict dynamics, and to understand the effect of our work and of our presence. That's what we call the interactions. When we know that we are working, we have a project in a specific context, in a specific area, we need to understand the impact that we are having, not only the intended, the planned effects, but also the unintended effects on the people, on the community relations, on conflict dynamics. And we have to make sure that we are minimizing the harm that we might be doing, and to maximize also the positive impact that we can have on people and on their relations. Next slide, please. Yeah, here this is also how it links to the third commitment of the CHS, where it says we have to avoid the negative effects of our work. So that's a commitment, that's a moral responsibility that we take. Next slide. So these negative effects, what can be negative effects? Maybe it's a bit a strange idea that we have good intentions, we have all done all our homework, and still we can have a negative effect. But I think we are aware that, for example, distributions can have an effect on the markets and prices. If we bring in many goods and handouts, this can have a negative effect. It can make put traders out of business, or the prices at the market will go down. Or distributions can be stolen, or can be goods can be taken away by thieves, but also by other people who want to misuse it for their own benefit. Another negative effect is that, yeah, who is benefiting from our aid and our support, and who is not benefiting? How do we do our selection, and how do we make sure that we're not creating more jealousy or tensions between people who are benefiting and those who are not benefiting? And lastly, yeah, with whom are we working together, and with which partners, which government, or hello? Oh, sorry, I just continue. So with whom are we working together, which partners or which other organizations? And what does that mean? Because if we work together with somebody, or with a government, or with, in certain cases, maybe we have to deal somehow with a, I don't know, an armed opposition group, yeah, then we also give recognition and legitimacy. And should we do that or not? These are big questions and dilemmas, but we have to think about what that means in terms of negative effects and risks for the people with whom we work, but also for ourselves as organizations. So just a few examples where we see the negative effects of what we do. But yes, we can go to the next one. It's also about how we do it and about our own behavior. So when we talk about do no harm, it's also about our behavior. How do we approach the people we work with? Are we respectful, accountable? Do we assure fairness and transparency or not? And if we're not respectful or accountable, it also has an implication. It shows that or it can reinforce the more negative and the violent relations and the culture of violence that may exist. And this is not what we as humanitarian organizations want to promote. Next one. So indeed, when we talk about this do no harm, as I said, we can have good intentions, but we may still do harm. And so we have to be aware of that. But at the same time, you can also have positive side effects. It's not only about this do no harm, it's also about how can we contribute to peace and social cohesion. So it has the two sides, the do no harm, and as it's also sometimes it's called the do some good, or the contribution to peace and social cohesion. So here I come a bit more to, okay, what does it mean? This is the theory of do no harm, and as it's also called conflict sensitivity. But how can we translate it? How can we integrate it in our work? So the first point is context analysis. And what we see is the context analysis, it's crucial. I saw we have somebody from Nigeria in the group. Actually, this was a picture taken in Nigeria, in Maiduguri, where we did the context analysis. But it's crucial to know what are the dynamics. For example, who's living in the area? What have been major changes over the past years? But also, and that's a terminology which is often used in do no harm, what are connectors and dividers, meaning connectors, what is bringing people together, which kind of occasions or interests or values maybe, but also what are dividers, what are dividing different people and people groups. So it's crucial to know where are you working, and it looks like it's really common sense, but still, especially when access to the areas is difficult, it might also be difficult to get this kind of information. But we need to look beyond the needs assessments that we're doing. We need to know much more about, what is the environment, who else is living there, and what are the different people and stakeholders. I'll get back to that in a minute. We can go to the next slide. So indeed, it is about the application of do no harm in a context, in a project cycle, the context analysis, the proposal development, and Sylvie mentioned this learning and preparedness phase. So really before these implementation, when you are designing the project, to do this risk analysis and check the potential, the risks. What are risks to do harm? What are the risks that our interventions have a negative effect? But also, what are the different options to contribute to social cohesion, and how to take it into account in the proposal that we are developing and hopefully getting funding for. But also in the monitoring and evaluation, how do we monitor for those unintended negative effects, and how do we use the lessons for our for learning and next future proposals? The complaints and feedback mechanisms. Is there safe access for people? Are people feeling safe to make use of the complaints boxes, for example, or are they afraid of repercussions? Are they is there safe access also, for example, to raise complaints about sexual misconduct? So do no harm, it also is about how safe are our complaint and feedback mechanisms, and how do we respond? It also links to the implementation, for example, the procurement. Where are we buying our goods, from which traders, and how do we know if these traders might have links to parties in a conflict? And what about staff, ourselves? What is the staff background, and do we have a diversity that's also reflecting the diversity on the ground? How do we communicate? So you see that this do no harm, it's actually needs to be applied all through the project cycle, and also in all our different elements and parts of our organizational practice. Next one, please. Yeah, we can skip this one. So now about to the Syria context, and as you all know, especially those coming from Syria, but also the people from Afghanistan, context is really complicated, and it's difficult, for example, to have good access to the areas where we work. We could go to the next. So this context analysis, we had quite some discussions when I was with the ZOA team in Syria to say, what is possible? What can we do? How can we do a context analysis beyond the needs assessments that we might already be doing, or that we find in documents from other international networks, donors, HRP, etc. So we did we tested a few approaches. For example, and you see the pictures here of a timeline analysis and an actor analysis. A timeline where you say, okay, for this specific area, what has happened? What has been the major events, for example, over the past 10 years? And this actor analysis, who are the major actors and stakeholders in this area? And what we saw, it's really important to make use of the knowledge of staff and the partners. We have colleagues who are knowledgeable, the partner organizations who are even much more knowledgeable about the context. So we need to sit down and take the time to discuss in a safe way, to learn from each other. And of course, to be aware also of biases and use multiple sources of information, because different people might have different viewpoints. I think Sylvie even mentioned that already at the start of this session. And we have to be respectful to each other, but we also need to make sure that there's an organization that we use information from different sources so that we can balance the different opinions. And we need to start small and build up the knowledge over time. So don't think that it's just impossible to do any context analysis, so let's forget about it. But just start small and build up slowly the knowledge over time.
Thank you, Corita. May we ask you for a word to conclude, please?
Yeah, maybe the last slide, or you want to skip that one? Yeah, this is just one other application, just if you have 1 minute. When we talk about this, how to contribute to social cohesion and peace, it might seem such a big word. So what we did is to unpack, to say peace is too big. Let's talk about social cohesion. Let's talk about what that means at individual level. Individual, family, community, and intercommunity. And this is a picture of an exercise we did, where you see, we just start from the inside, bottom up, from the individual to the family, the community, and the inter-community between different community groups. And then we discuss how in our work for WASH, food security, how can we do some good to these relations, starting very small, but having the vision to build it up. So let me end here.
Thank you, Corita. Thank you so much. Quick recap. You've been mentioning the do no harm, but also the do some good approach, and highlighting the how. And this is absolutely key. And you've been highlighting the linkages with the commitment 3 from the CHS, but also the fact that it's interlinked to all the commitments, and it's cross-cutting all the phases of the project cycle. If we do not address, or if we do not avoid, let's say like this, doing further harm, we may come to a situation that is worse than the initial one, and it happens. It's not easy to put in place. Again, it's really about the how, and it goes beyond the needs assessment. And this is why we wanted, Corita, to have you coming up front here doing this presentation, because it's really the first aspect we have to consider. So context analysis, but also risk analysis. Okay, what may happen and how do we ensure mitigation? So we can be typically at this preparedness phase. And we have together with us now Geneviève, who will introduce capacity building and learning. And we saw this was really coming together, because one way to ensure we do no harm is that we learn from the past and ensure we are not redoing some of our mistakes and build on the good experiences we've had. This is all entailed into the learning and the capacity building approach. I've seen recently in East Africa, for example, how it's key to have the right people running properly initial and risk assessment. If this is not done well, if you do not have the capacities, if you haven't learned from the past in an enough good way, then the whole process will be false or biased. And this is where you have more risks. So, Geneviève, over to you, please, to introduce capacity building and learning, and then we will have a space for discussion. Thank you, Geneviève.
Thank you, Sylvie, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. I'm very pleased to be listening to the amazing practice that is in the room. And indeed, I think my presentation comes very well after that of Corita. So I'm the CHS Alliance training lead. I manage and implement the CHS Alliance training strategy. And I've been with CHS Alliance and previously HAP International and even before ACT Alliance. So tackling these issues of quality, accountability with different standards for some time. I'm going to focus more on the CHS for this presentation because that's really what we are working on now at CHS Alliance. So I'm sure you all know this booklet very well. What I'm going to start with is underlying that the CHS really encompasses several levels, and that's really important to bear in mind. So first, it doesn't come the standard doesn't come in a vacuum. It's really a collection of good practice, including the do no harm framework, the humanitarian principles, humanitarian law, learnings from big emergencies, post-emergency evaluation. So it's really a collection of good practice. It comes with policies and procedures that the organization needs to have in place. That's really organizational responsibility. It comes with type of operational procedures and activities that the staff needs to put in place to meet the different commitment, and that's the key actions of the CHS. But it also relates to organizational culture and attitude. That's less obvious when you read the booklet, but it's really important, and it's something that in the new CHS Alliance strategy that is about to be released, so the 2022 to 2024, it comes more and more, or takes more and more place, because it's really important for organizational responsibility and key action to have a lasting effect, that the values of the organization also correspond to the values carried through the core humanitarian standards. So for instance, how the organization relate to accountability, does the organization really welcome complaint, to name a few. The point I want to make here by showing this difference level is that ultimately the CHS is implemented by people for people. So it's really staff from the organization who needs to understand, who need to own the CHS principle, values, and recommendation, but also the staff that needs to be supported by the management, by consistent policies and procedures, and by being encouraged to apply the CHS principles and recommendation. It's also important, very important, to recognize that beside that the CHS being implemented by people, the CHS comes in a broader framework. So sending you back to Cora's presentation, we operate in a context which brings about challenges and opportunities. I mean, just naming, for instance, the issue of humanitarian access, broader challenges to humanitarian principle, but also opportunities of working together and learning from one another and walking in small steps toward achieving our objectives. So how can capacity building and learning help brings together what the CHS proposes in terms of good practice, organizational responsibilities, key action, but also values. With the broader context, challenges, opportunities we face, but also the fact that we're all human. First of all is, and again, going back to Carita's presentation, is acknowledge that we don't operate in a vacuum, and that any capacity building and learning action need to be based on the reality. So it needs to recognize good practice. And I think we're right here learning from one another, but also how do we bring those bodies of good practice with the reality of the context we operate in. The other important point is provide a space for discussion. So repeating what Caritas just said, but recognizing that we all bring expertise, we all bring an experience from different contexts, different organizations, different places, different positions we have had as individual. And so how can we learn from one another and make the best out of this experience? So really providing that space for discussion and indeed a safe space. And then the last thing, very important in a capacity building context, is how do we bring the right balance between knowledge, skills, but also attitude. And this has been quite key in the CHS Alliance training journey and learning journey. At the beginning, the first CHS Alliance training we've had, and we're still there to some extent, we've been focusing a lot on attitude and knowledge. And why so? Because obviously we wanted to really share the message of why is each of the CHS commitment important? Why does it make a difference if we try to implement them, even if it's challenging, and implement them in a safe way? So yeah, really this attitude of understanding why it is important, but also maybe, and it goes back to the culture. So why it is important for me, and why is accountability maybe just not a simple word or just not a mechanism? Accountability to affected population does not go back only to involving the population, managing complaints, sharing good information, but really is more of a global value, like how am I myself trying to achieve accountability, and how do I really welcome feedback from affected people, but also maybe from colleagues. How can we nurture that discussion space? So that's yeah, that was for attitude. So I'm being carried away, but that was about attitude. Knowledge, obviously, because we want to know what the CHS commitment contains and how does it look when the CHS commitments are being implemented. But then the bits that has been a bit left out in a way, it's the skills, and the skills is more complex to bring in training in a single training actions. You'd need a really good simulation exercise and then debrief. We do that, for instance, in our investigation training workshop, but skills also need practice. And that's where we transition from, being in a training event or being in a capacity building event and going into the reality. And so the question here is, how do we start building this learning journey, going from learning and applying, and how are we supported within this learning journey? And I think we have a really great event, a great series of events here that really try to test a learning journey. And I'm sure there'll be really good lessons out of this learning journey that we are going through right now with different partners from Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Just say for maybe the last 2 minutes, for CHS Alliance, how does it translate into practice? So really try also to build this learning journey in a training, or capacity building actions. So trying to link more training and our communities of practice. We are about to start a focal point, CHS focal point training workshop that also looks at the role and skills required for focal point to enable the application of the CHS within the organization. We're revising our investigation training workshop to also bringing it to several stages, separating the more like knowledge aspects from the skills, the application of it. We also want to in the future try bring some focus on specific countries and learn from their application of the CHS, and nurture a community of trainers, strengthening our trainers community, but also bringing refresher opportunities. Some challenges, of course, then how in the future will we go? We went from all face-to-face to completely remote. So how will we go back to more like hybrid version in the future? And also, of course, regionalizing our base of trainers. That's really something that we want to put the accent on in the future. As a conclusion, so the CHS is a journey. The application of the CHS is a journey. It's a learning journey, and it's true for CHS Alliance. We don't have all the responses. We develop great tools, and all these tools, including the verification and the self-assessment that you're going to hear more about, are also designed to try to have this kind of two-way. So us also learning, and the CHS Alliance to be able to nurture that space for mutual learning, and trying to have our training and capacity building approach follow this model of what can we bring ourselves, what can we call other to brings, and how can we have that space to learn together and help each other address challenges, but also identify opportunities for improved implementation of the CHS. Thank you. I hope that makes sense, and I'll be looking forward to your comments or questions when the time comes.
Thank you, Geneviève. Thank you so much. It's going to be difficult to summarize. There are so many key aspects here, but it was really interesting to hear you recalling the knowledge, skills and attitude, and doing this link between, it's not enough to know, it's all a question of attitude, of behavior, and linking with Corita's presentation on do no harm. Okay, you can be the best professional you want if you're not acting well enough, good enough, if you're not listening to people and trying to understand the culture, the context in the best possible way, then you may miss it all. And this is having a lot of space into the trainings and the capacity building approach of the CHS. So what you said is that the how matters. And this is the difficult aspect. No, it's not only about knowing commitment 1, 2, 3, etc. It's really about the how we do it, and how we do it with this community perspective being central. You can have the perfect complaints and feedback mechanism, and it will not work because it was not designed in a way that is fitting the community's preferred ways to communicate, to share views. It's not safe enough, etc. So you mentioned that, and it's really key. I'm taking this example because we have so many challenges with the complaints and feedback mechanisms being operational. You mentioned, yeah, practice is needed. This is why we've, as you were saying, we've shifted from ad hoc training into learning strategies, no longer term strategies, smaller steps, but really ensuring that practice is coming together with hybrid versions of capacity building and learning. So shorter workshops and sessions, and ensuring people are practicing and sharing again, etc. And finally, you were skipping into what is of so high interest to us, which is training at community level. Since 2000, we've been saying with other colleagues from Sphere and others, we need to do more training at community level on quality and accountability. But often it is staying at awareness raising level, isn't it? We inform people of what we are doing, but there is kind of a gap in between what we are trained on, what we know about, our principles, commitments, and how to apply that, and what is transmitted to the people we work with, while at the end we have to apply it all together, no? So very interesting. Thank you so much. I would like to see if Shama is online. Shama Mall, she had difficulties to connect from Karachi. Shama? If Shama is not online, I'm sure we will have other opportunities to hear from Community World Service Asia how this capacity building at community level on quality and accountability has been conducted since more than a decade, with examples of, for example, designing theaters on quality and accountability during the response to the earthquake in 2005-6. This was conducted and proved to be really, really interesting. How do you use a way to transmit the key messages on quality and accountability to communities in a way that is culturally acceptable, that is owned by the people? Community World Service Asia was also the first organization to host the Sphere focal points. And I was the one in 2005, just after the earthquake. And this is where we launched together this joint approach, and we will get back to this later on. The joint approach, so that it would make more sense at community level, dealing with Sphere and at that time HAP and other standards. So let's open up to the floor to all of you participants and panelists and co-organizers. Please feel free to raise your hand, comment, question, share examples, etc. We have a slot for this, and it's really, really important that we hear from those who want to share their views. Over to anyone who would like to come in. Please, Kuram and Zainab, tell me or give the floor if I do not see all the hands. Yes, Kamar Iqbal, please.
First of all, thank you to Corita for a detailed presentation on do no harm approach, and as well as Genevieve shared that the localized approach that will be taken on to move forward the agenda of localization as well at the level of CHS, so that the community level engagement, because the participation and engagement of communities always remain a big challenge for the quality and accountability aspects whenever we talk about, and even in all the geographical context, it remained a quite some of the challenge. But as you mentioned that CWS has initiated the community level theaters to sensitize the communities. So I would like to have more in detail analysis of that tool or strategy that has been used by CWS, so that we can, at least in the context of Pakistan, we may build up on the basis of their learning, so that we can initiate the agenda of quality and accountability at the community level, rather than to initiating any other tools or devising any other tools. It is better to learn from their previous experiences and then build on the basis of those practices, good practices and learnings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamar. Thank you. Maybe we take few other comments or questions, and then we can regroup and have some feedback from Corita and Genevieve. Who else would like to intervene? Please feel free. This is really a good space for sharing ideas and comments.
Maybe Samreen would want to.
Zainab, please.
Yes, Samreen wants to speak. Samreen, please go ahead.
Okay, Samreen.
Thank you, Zainab. Yeah. So basically, I just wanted to add a little comment, and that is my learning from whatever I am working in the development sector and in of course, as a ad worker. So to practice the localization is a bit challenging to the ad workers, or maybe we can say to the local organization, that we are still facing some pressures from the donor side, and we are still struggling to take the power from the donors, so we can give this to the communities. So it is one limitation that I am just facing since the year, and as I am in this sector since a year. So that is the one thing that I am not understanding still, what are we doing or what we can do from the CHS platform to educate to the donors, to make them more sensitive, to make them more responsible, to make them more flexible. So what are the main activities, or what can our you can say, what can we do, what can be our role to make the donors more sensitive, or maybe more flexible, to ensure the CHS commitments during our interventions or during our responses. So it is my one you can say thought, what is making me uncomfortable since a year, and I'm not sure if it's for all, or it's only me to think over that. Thank you.
Thank you, Samrin, for this key point and comment. And thank you for being courageous to share this with Geneviève. She will get back to you in a minute. Very interesting point. Jan, am I seeing that you want to take the floor, please?
Yes, thank you. I was
Over to
looking.
you.
Hi, thanks, Sylvie. I was looking for the hands up button. I couldn't find it. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. What I learned from the previous two speakers, really appreciated, by the way, is that it's about learning together. And I think it's not just about knowing what the standard is about and the 9 commitments, but it's how you apply it. And what I understand from you, Sylvie, that later on there is also an opportunity to think about this question, like what are ways that we can do this together then as a joint learning, but also to think together. Suppose if you are in the context of Afghanistan or in Syria or Nigeria, or how does this apply to our own context, and what can we do together to make sure that we adhere, because we all know that there are practical obstacles, but how can we overcome these? Or if we cannot overcome these in our specific context, what can we do? Are there alternatives to? So I hope later on there will be an opportunity also to go into joint learning. And am I correct, Sylvie?
Absolutely, and maybe we can start with this and giving the floor back to Geneviève and Corita. Thank you, Jan, and address or respond or comment on what was shared by our colleagues. Geneviève, do you want to start with? Over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Sylvie. So thanks, Amin and Jan, for your questions and comments. So on the, maybe to start with the donor side, and I fully understand and appreciate this donors pressure that in a way reduces the space that we feel we have to apply the CHS recommendation and really design and walk the way of engaging an engagement approach with the affected population. My advice I mean, from what I've learned and from what I've heard and from previous discussion in training context and elsewhere is really this negotiation in a way right from the start, or not negotiation, but trying to find out what what is your space actually to apply, and how can you maybe make that space a little bigger, so that space really to apply accountability. It takes place in two ways. One way is, of course, your budget. So what's your budget? What financial capacity do you have to carry participatory activity? That's one. And then the other one is how do you negotiate flexibility? So needs will, the context, the situation will evolve inevitably within your time frame for implementing the project. You will learn from the affected population. Maybe you will need to change what you had initially planned. So how will that happen with the donors? What will be the process to get any change approved, and what's your space for change? I think that's really two important things that sometimes we tend to, because we're rushed to get the project approved, we rush to meet the donor's requirement, also the paperwork that goes along getting the project approved. But so really try to nest into the discussion this aspect of space. It's interesting when you speak to donors, often that they have a perception that they try to do their best to support accountability. And from a CHS Alliance perspective, we've tried also through the self-assessment tools, but also looking more at indicators, broader indicators, how we can encourage the donors to also show to which extent they are facilitating accountability to happen at field level. So are there processes supporting accountability or not? And it's interesting that there might be also misperception sometimes that one side saying the processes somehow support accountability, but both way. And the other side think that they feel very pressured and they don't have that space. So going back to that, trying to find out ways and opportunities to make that space a little bigger, but also bearing in mind that you have a budget, and how do you account and how do you bring engagement activities specifically into your project proposal. And then, yeah, practical obstacles, and how do you look at these practical obstacles? Of course, it's really, and going back to what Cora said, it's super important to implement the CHS in a way that's safe for the population. So there's no point in convening a meeting if this is going to put people into a dangerous situation. And I think it's really important first to recognize these obstacles and know that these are obstacles for all of us. So common obstacles among, given area of operation. To acknowledge the perception of the obstacles we have, so how they translate into the reality, what's really concretely, where does it blocks us? And then from this discussion, looking at, okay, what else can we do? Or, and that's very specific to a context. I think, sorry if I'm missing your name, Corita presented also a few tools that can facilitate a discussion. But I think, yeah, in a way, any coordination for or any opportunity that you have to come together and reflect together on the situation. There won't be one good practice or one good advice for every situation. So it's really looking at it together and sometimes also looking at advocacy, looking at what donors could do or help with in a particular situation. Yeah, really identifying our space of action.
Thank you, Geneviève. Thank you so much. Maybe, Corita, the floor is yours for a minute to recap and to share your views on the comments.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, the 3 words that come to my mind, I heard that I want to reflect on briefly. Learning, we are rushing, and how to make it practical. And I think these are really valid when you talk about do no harm and how to really integrate it in our work. I think often it is seen as again, additional task, again, something else to do, and our time is limited. But what we also see, what I also see from my colleagues within ZOA in different countries, then if you take time at the start, at proposal development, to sit and learn from each other, like I said, with Syria context, really sitting, learning, talking to colleagues, to partners who have maybe more information about context and context dynamics. If you do that at the start, it's so beneficial, and it will pay off later on in the project implementation. If you really have the knowledge and you do a proper identification of risks, but also you reflect and brainstorm about those opportunities to do some good, to contribute to better community relations. Yeah, that's crucial, and it may take a bit of time, maybe even 1 or 2 hours sitting together and reflecting, and can make your work so much more effective than doing a proposal writing job with mainly expat management team members without involving local staff, local partners. And then maybe in the end you have the funding and you're starting to implement, but you're lacking so much information, and you're just missing the good opportunities. So that's really what I've seen happening, and really my big recommendation. Take this time at the start to sit down, and then it will really help you help us in our implementation and in being much more effective and having more positive side effects, unintended side effects.
Thank you, Corita. Thank you, Geneviève. Maybe we can go even one step beyond. You say explain, understand the context, talk with people. This is all very basic. Explain, but also advocate. I mean, use those commitments and our whole background that we have with the standards to advocate towards those we work with. What do we know from the field that others may not know? What are limitations? What are opportunities? So explain and advocate. And when this is in place from the upfront, from the very initial assessment, from the very beginning, then through the monitoring and evaluation lens, we can follow up. And this is probably why we have a lot of monitoring and evaluation officers in this room. But if you don't have it from up front, then it's very difficult to stick it in the middle of the project life. So I think, yeah, this is really, really important. Thank you, Corita. Thank you, Geneviève. We started to hear about joint capacity building, joint work. We heard about initial assessment. I would like to start saying, what about self-assessment and where we are at? How do we know what we are doing? In relation also with the application of the CHS. And we started to hear about coordination. So I would like to take this as an opportunity to introduce the, the two next panelists. We have together with us Iman Ismail, who is the regional representative from ICVA for the MENA region, who will talk through localization and equitable partnerships, through the famous Nexus, through emergency relief, development, peace building, wherever we are at in terms of context. And particularly tackling the how can we avoid subcontracting only? And here maybe we go back to the relations with donors, and advocacy, and why sometimes it takes time. And we need also opportunities to kind of test and correct and go back to initial assessments, etc. So we will have Iman now with us to introduce this topic, and this will be followed by a presentation from Bonaventure Sokpo, who is the senior advisor on the CHS and who will introduce to us the verification scheme. What is in place? in terms of verification. What about the self-assessment? And here I've added this small question mark. Can we dream of having a joint self-assessment process led locally? Can we use the tools and ensure we really work together and save energy and have better results in terms of measuring what we are doing for the benefit of the people we are working with and we are serving? So I'll first give the floor to you, Iman. A warm welcome. Thank you very much. You're extremely busy. You're with us. We appreciate, and I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Selfie. Good morning, everybody. Sabah al-khair. Assalamu alaikum. It's my great pleasure to be with you all today and hear great insights and inputs from colleagues from local civil society organizations, INGOs, colleagues from CHS, ZOA, Sphere. It's really inspiring and really appreciate this great opportunity. My name is Iman Ismail. I'm based in Jordan. I represent ICFA in MENA region. I'm also the focal point on localization at the global level. Allow me to share with you a couple of points. It's big, broad subjects to speak about the meaningful participation, localization, and link that with Nexus. But I'll try my best to on some of the points, and hopefully also this can be inspiring, and happy to receive any additional comments and questions later on. In the previous sessions, different discussions about how practical we can be in our efforts to advance certain elements regarding accountability, coordination, and strengthening the role of local actors. For us as ICFA, we are a global NGO consortia. We always call on the different actors to stop the talk and walk the talk, and how we be practical in our efforts to advance the role of local actors. So we've been calling first to define what success looks like whenever we talk about advancing the localization and strengthening the role of local actors, and to consider that the different countries and contexts are really different. When we speak about inside Syria, it's different than the context in Asia, or even in MENA region, the context is different from Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. So we need to be very agile in considering that the localization should not be generalized. We need to be very context specific and understand the challenges and the successes that the local actors are making every day. And actually, COVID-19 has brought the localization discussion into the center since the last 2 years. And everyone now is becoming more and more keen to speak about the role of local actors, because really the local actors have proven that they are among the first responders. They have agile leadership, and they are really smart, and they embracing smart tactics to be among the first responders. So how we can take COVID-19 context and other challenges as opportunities to influence certain change. The second point is that we need to consider that localization is not only limited to emergency context, but also during humanitarian and long-term nexus. The long-term planning also starts at the beginning of any emergency, and we are always talking about the linkages between humanitarian, long-term, and peace building and negotiation process. In a protracted emergency conflict in our region, in Syria, in Iraq, in occupied Palestinian territories, we have learned in this region that, let's say, the average of waiting period for any refugees to be able to return back home, it's around 20 years. From MENA region, we have even longer duration, unfortunately. So how we as a humanitarian workers, we can plan very early on the linkages between the humanitarian response and then plan to the midterm solutions and response, and think of a longer term sustainable solutions. And this is linked to the role of local actors, because again, local actors are here, are staying in their countries or responding from different regions. So this is essential to whenever we talk about localization. In addition to that, we all heard from UN perspective how aid must be as local as possible and as international as necessarily. We as ECFA, we always also call that localization is a process, though which a diverse range of humanitarian actors are engaged and are involved. So we call always on a complementarity partnership among the different actors, believing that we have overwhelming vulnerabilities and needs in MENA region, in Asia, in Africa. So there is a space for all actors to come together and effectively to coordinate among each other. And the interpretation of the word localization, it's different from one local to another international actors to donor UN agencies. So it's basic to define localization based on the needs, based on the capacity of local actors, and based on their expectation as well. So localization should not be looked at it from top-down approach. It should be defined by the local actors themselves. Local actors do not need a person like me or another external person to define what their role is. They need to be proactive and define what their role is, what the support that they need, and how they can manage to find the space. So, and this is well aligned with the Grand Bargain 2.0 commitment, previously the Humanitarian Summit commitments, and other global and regional commitments as well. So 3 elements here: the capacity and agency themselves from the local actors themselves, the space that is available for the local actors, and the system. And the system, how the coordination systems in place are supporting the local actors to be a meaningful participants, not passive participants, and to have them upfront discussing the key elements and the key decisions and the key issues impacting their work. For us also, I'd like to mention the key pillars of localization. The word localization usually resonates with the word funding. Funding is really important, but it's one pillar. It's not covering all the pillars. And for us, we are collaborating with different experts and actors, and we came up to a conclusion that localization should cover partnerships, leadership, the coordination element. Number 4 is the participation. Number 6 is capacity strengthening elements, policy influence and advocacy. And the last pillar is funding. So it's extremely important as local actors or international NGOs to focus on localization, considering those 7 pillars, and to look at it from a comprehensive approach. So funding, again, is one element, and it's important to channel funding to the local actors, but also to speak about their meaningful participation in the decision-making processes and their meaningful participation in the coordination platforms and in the collective advocacy, and for them to have a voice so they can speak up about the issues that impacting their humanitarian work and their development work as well. Speaking about the meaningful participation of local actors, we as ECFA, we worked with different UN agencies, local actors and donors to articulate the interagency standing committee on strengthening the participation, representation and leadership of local actors. And we came with different conclusions on the fact that localization is a shared responsibility. And this is a key message whenever I speak with local actors whom we are working with in MENA region, in Asia, and in Africa. We emphasize on this fact that localization is a process, it's a shared responsibility. And the first party in this process is the local actors themselves. So our message to the local actors that it's very important to build a concrete and meaningful partnership with INGOs, UN agencies, with key corporates. This is really important to respond to emergencies and implement projects, but it's not enough. You need to be proactive as a local actors and have agile leadership and a clear vision on how local actors need to be very active in the coordination discussion, very active in the collective advocacy, and come together as local actors in a unified coalition or a unified coordination bodies. We can call it local fora, local network, local coalition. And I'm so thrilled always to see that there are huge progress in how the local actors are more and more realizing the importance of being a member within a local coordination body or a local NGO fora, because local actors, when they are coming together in a unified position, of course they are stronger and they are making more impact whenever they advocate on key issues related to protection, funding, humanitarian access, and any other issues impacting their humanitarian and development work. So the responsibility stands first on the shoulder of local actors themselves. So they are becoming more and more unified, asking on certain support regarding capacity building or learning programs, funding, or a space, certain seats around the table to be fully occupied with local actors who can be vocal around the issues impacting their work. The second responsibility, actually, it's on key donors and UN agencies and INGOs, assuming that they have the resources, they also have a space. So they have key responsibilities to continue channeling support to local actors and give a space to local actors to be meaningful participants in the key collective advocacy work, global conferences, key coordination events. And let me give you an example from the humanitarian country team. We as ECFA, we conducted a regional research last year to look at how many local actors are participating in the humanitarian country team in the countries impacted by emergencies in MENA region. And to be genuine and very honest with you, the findings and statistics were very, very modest, considering the great experience from local actors in Syria, in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Palestine, in Yemen, and Libya. And the study relieved that local actors have a great expertise and they have limited participation in the humanitarian country team coordination and limited leadership in the cluster working group. And this indicated certain recommendation to the donors and INGOs and to the local actors themselves that there are different missing opportunities here. Local actors should not only ordinary participants around the table, they can co-lead certain clusters such as cash, protection, WASH, and they also developed great expertise over the years in understanding the context well and in developing certain tools. And we came up with different key findings and recommendations on how to build a meaningful partnership between the local and national actors and the INGOs, so both can learn mutually from each other. And here I'd like to underline the word mutually, because it's mutual learning. I come to learn from you, and then in return, I assume you would also learn from me. And this is also a call from me to replace the word capacity building whenever we mention it, and replace it by the word mutual learning, because it's equal And then INGOs, UN agencies, and donors can learn a lot from local actors. And in return, the opposite is quite right. So it's about managing expectation and equally design the partnership from day one. And I was also asked to speak a little bit about equitable partnership, how we can achieve it. I think equitable partnership needs two parties. And whenever the two parties agree from day one that it's win-win situation and we are equal in saying yes and no, then we will be making a huge difference. So local actors need to have a space to be able to say no for anything they are not comfortable doing it, or not saying really that this is the priority for us and for our people in our country. And INGOs, UN, and donors need to give the space and this kind of environment where local actors can push back on certain elements related to the partnership, such as administrative cost, budget, personnel cost, and certain activities. They really not say it, not find it as a priority in them in the meantime in certain countries. The second element, I think, would start from the due diligence process. We know that this is one of the requirements, one of the most famous requirements. So are the local actors also giving certain opportunity to evaluate if the partnership with INGOs or UN agencies, is it a win situation for them? Or is it giving them the right recognition, the right visibility if they enter in a partnership with international actor? And we had so many discussion about this, about to what extent the international actors are giving this space when they design the due diligence and a partnership agreement. The third element also, it's about sharing the risk. Whenever you build a partnership, you need to consider the elements of risk sharing rather than risk shifting to local actors. In different contexts such as Syria, Palestine, Libya, and Yemen, there are so many risks impacting the work of local actors. So to what extent we together as two parties want to have a successful and equitable partnership, we consider certain elements on sharing the risk with each other in a very genuine and honest manner, and have this risk splitted equally and 50% equal among each other. And I think the local actors, whenever they realize they need to discuss this from day one, then they enter any partnership with any international actors very much strongly and very much confident that they can discuss and negotiate and report back on any risks, issues in a very genuine manner. So,
Iman, can we give you 1 second to conclude, please, so that you can also have time to get back to some of the participants' points? Thank you.
Sure, Sylvie. I was actually about to conclude. So this is really excellent timing. So I wanted to conclude by saying that these kind of elements, I know it's difficult to sum up all elements regarding equitable partnership, localization, and nexus in 10 minutes, but happy to continue this engagement with you all and have maybe another chance to discuss more in depth any subjects linked to the localization in a more specific way. Thank you again. I'll stop there and happy to receive any other comments or questions.
Iman, thank you very much for taking the challenge of presenting this topic in 10 plus minutes. It's so wide, and you've highlighted the number of key principles around how we should work together, how we should start with assessing properly or understanding properly who are the actors on board when we start working in a specific place. And here I'm relating with the do no harm approach and the presentation from Corita, Who are the connectors and dividers? Do we understand properly the context is the first point, no? Who will be the actors we will work with? You highlighted also the mutual learning as a true need. And I'm sure Geneviève has taken notes on this, you know, going from capacity building into something much more wide, much more complex maybe, but that is called mutual learning, which I hope we are trying to do, for example, today with very different people, you know, going back from the field work into a room and shifting from one place to another to learn from all sides. You mentioned demand, something that is key to my heart. You mentioned collective advocacy. How, my question would be, how do we ensure that we use the commitments from the CHS to have proper, interesting, meaningful collective advocacy? How do we reverse the machine and use our experience based on our context, use the commitments to run some meaningful advocacy and really address some of our issues, some of our asks and voices. So this is absolutely key. I would like to shift and give the floor to Bonaventure Sokpo, who is going to introduce us to the CHS verification scheme with a specific highlight on the self-assessment and hopefully the potential for a joint approach. Bona, thanks a lot for being with us. You have the floor. We are listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvie. Thank you. I have to say that I'm very pleased to hear my predecessors talking about very interesting topics, and Geneviève, who mentioned the value and the attitude that CHS is promoting. That is something good. We have talked about the CHS content the last time with you, and I would like to connect my discussion now to that. And I really liked what have been said by Eman about the partnership, the localization, the capacities of the national organization. I hope in my presentation, I would like also to put some element from how CHS can contribute to that. I would like to share my screen if that is possible.
Yes, Mona, it's possible.
Great. Let me put my PowerPoint in the presenter mode. Let's see how it's working.
Yes,
I hope
it works, Bona.
Great, thank you. So as I was saying, we talked about the CHS as a standard last time. We wanted to make sure that we understand what is in the standard. And I promised to also to talk about the CHS verification. Thank you, Sylvie, for giving me the floor today. Maybe my name is Bonaventure Sokpo. I work at CHS Alliance as Senior Advisor on CHS and outreach, and my work is to make sure that we connect well with national and local organizations. I'm very passionate about that because I believe that we won't be able to meet the CHS commitment if we are not all on board together. That's why what you said, Eman, about mutual work is something that is talking to me very well. And how do we also, as national organization, and if you are national, how do we really show our capacity? Because the capacities are there, we just need to make them seen and recognized. So what is the CHS verification? The CHS verification is for us the way you can put into practice the standard. I heard today somebody say it's not just to know the standard, it's to put it into practice and live it. So CHS verification is a way to really do that. To do the CHS verification, CHS Alliance has the CHS verification scheme that have been developed. Let me talk a little bit about that now. We see the CHS, the good thing that we have in it is that it's a measurable, a verifiable standard. This is the good thing that it's developed so that we can measure the progress over time. The verification is the structured, systematic process to assess the degree to which an organization's work complies with the CHS. So you will see that in a little, what you gain by doing the CHS verification. The first thing is that will show where you are in meeting the commitment. It's done in a way that everyone can choose the CHS, one option of the verification scheme. We have three options that are here that you can see. One is the CHS self-assessment. This is led internally by the organization with support from the CHS Alliance. We have two other verification, independent verification and certification. The independent verification and certification are done by external auditors who come and audit the organization against the CHS. Independent verification, you know where you are, the same as the CHS self-assessment, but when you do, it's done by external and professional auditors. The certification is another one that will confirm, and it's a pass-fail exercise. If you comply, you get the certificate. If you don't, then you don't get the certificate. But the two independent verification and certification are working on the same basis by external auditors done by HCAI. Let me show the two options and who is doing it, who is supporting them. As I said, the self-assessment, all the process is supported by the CHS Alliance, while this is led by the organization. As I said, we have a focal point in the organization who will coordinate the process, but CHS Alliance provides the tools, the methodology, and the dashboard, and everything that is linked to the verification in the self-assessment. HCAI, Humanitarian Quality Assurance Initiative, is the independent organization conducting the two other options, independent verification and certification. This is the way it does. I want to mention right now that for the CHS self-assessment, there is no additional resources or cost that you will spend to do it. So CHS Alliance will support you to do that. For HCAI, there are external auditors. You will need to pay the service. But the good news I want to mention right now is that there is a subsidy fund available for everyone, especially for national and local small organizations. You can apply for a subsidy fund. And if you apply, that will cover up to 90% of the cost that will be generated by the process. So it's made in a way that this is accessible for everyone who would like to verify itself around against the CHS. I want to mention that the three verification options that I mentioned, they have a common foundation. They are all based on the same verification framework, 62 indicators that are covering organizational responsibilities and key actions. We talked about this element last time. I hope you remember. We have the same scoring grid for the indicators. You have the scoring grid runs from 0 to 4, and the description is the same for the three options. And the three options are using the same sources of information: documentation, staff interviews or survey, consultation with communities and partners. So that's why for CHS Alliance, everyone conducting one of these options is valid for us. I would like now to focus a little bit on the self-assessment that CHS Alliance support. If you do a self-assessment, what do you get? What do? You will check the system guidance and policies in place at the organizational level, ensuring the quality and accountability of interventions. So with the organizational responsibilities, you will check that for your organization. You will also check the implementation of those policies in the project and activities in the field. This is what we will be doing through the staff survey. And the last element is that you will do inclusion of quality and accountability measures in partnership practice and tools. So if you are an organization working through partners, you will also get partners' perception on the quality of your partnership. So this is done in a way that we cover the main aspect of the work that we are doing. I have here, what do you check? What do? You'll see system and tools, guidance and policy we talked about. Staff and volunteers of the organizations will be involved in the process through a survey. You will get feedback from people and communities who are affected by crisis you are working with. They also will give you the perception of the quality of the work that you are providing, that will help you define the level where you are in the discussion. Thank you. The local partners as well. They will give the perception. Before I stop, I know I have a very few minutes left. Before I stop, I just wanted here to show you what do you get from the result. You see here a dashboard. This dashboard is something that we published in 2020 when we looked at where we are among the organizations who are CHS verified. And when you do the CHS self-assessment, you get also a dashboard like this for your organization. You see where the organization stands regarding the commitment. So in this one, we see the commitment to 5, the complaints are welcomed and addressed is the most challenging one. So the other thing that is very interesting to see is we can also see over years the progress that you are making. This is what is also good in verifying progressively. You see where you are. For each of the commitment, you see in details for each of the indicators, where do you stand? What are you doing? Where are you performing very well? Where are you being challenged? And where do you need to focus your work? I want to finish by saying your question, Cindy, is that can we dream about the collective self-assessment led locally? Yes, there are many ways of saying that, because one of the things, what we see in the dashboard like this, is if you are a group of organizations working together and we are all involved in the verification or self-assessment, we can put together where our scores and see how collectively are we performing against the CHS in this context. So with that, we can have activities to improve ourselves individually, but also work collectively to improve our collective performance on quality and on accountability toward people. Because of the time, I will stop there and see if you have a question. I will continue answering your question. Thank you very much.
Bernard, thank you very, very much. You ended with those words, collective performance. And you mentioned the partnerships, and I thought this was going so well with what Iman was presenting just before. And this is why I was asking, can we dream about running those collective self-assessments? So we do assess together, we do improve together. It makes so much more sense in a way. If you allow me, Bona, I'd like to add one thing. You say that there's a cost if you go through the independent verification. Yes, there is no financial cost, maybe upfront if you go for the self-assessment, but I would like to emphasize that there is a human resource cost. It's really requiring a lot of work, a lot of dedicated time from the teams. And this is where I also believe that collectively, it can be much more cost effective. It can be much more interesting in a way to embark together into this process and have the proper focal points involved, etc. But maybe to finish with another bridge between Iman's presentation and yours, let's be active in terms of proposing from the field perspective some mechanisms to use those tools you have to measure the performance, but be a little bit innovative in certain contexts and imagine maybe how we can collectively share some feedback to ourselves, to colleagues, to donors, etc., on how we are doing. I will stop here and open up the floor so that anyone can contribute, share comments, question, etc. Please feel free to raise your hand, to unmute if we are not seeing your hand. Iman, do you want to start with a comment following Bona's presentation, please?
Thank you, Sylvie. Thank you, Bona. Great to see you also. And the collaboration with CHS and HCI is really very much appreciated by the local fora whom we are working with here in MENA region. And there are so many local NGO networks and fora are very much eager to prove that they have the capacity, the strengthen their accountability mechanism. So great to channel this support to them, because again, it's not about building or implementing projects from here and there. They like to work more on their accountability mechanisms, because also this will allow more opportunities for them to scale up their humanitarian and development programs. As ECFA, we have been encouraging local actors to collaborate and go through the self-assessment and the verification exercise. And if there are so many challenges regarding capacities or funding, to encourage them to report and explore some support from different agencies and donors. So great to see how this also links to the capacity strengthening and linked to the how to advance the role of local actors. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you very much. More comments or questions? And for our colleagues, Arabic speaking, please rely on Bashir to translate any comment or question you would have. Yes, Dr. Nakibullah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank Bona and also Iman for the comprehensive presentation and also explanations. Just would like to ask a question that's from Bona. For the self-assessment on CHS, if some of the NGOs organizations are working together as umbrella on a project and they are implementing it, so how they can then do the self-assessment? Do you have any option for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bona, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sylvie. Thank you, Dr. Nakibula. I hope I pronounced it very well. Thank you for the question. This is I think the question Sylvia also asked, can we bring about collective assessment? And so, as Sylvie said, we will be working together to see how we do that. I have to say that the CHS self-assessment is designed for organizations, for individual organizations. But what is happening is that we also have been, as you have seen in the dashboard I proposed, I shared, these are situations of a group of organizations. So we can clearly see how collectively these organizations are performing. For a group of organizations working on the implementation of one project, something that can be done. I have to mention a work that has been done by HKI already on independent verification, group verification done with ActionAid. These have proved to be very interesting for organizations involved in the group. It needs that the group of the organization, they have a mechanism in place that will make sure that each of them are working together on the improvement. So we won't see one organization left behind when the others are improving, because the performance will reflect the group's performance. So there are some elements to put in place to be able to do the CHS verification as a group. And HKI has done that work already. We can use and inspire that we can inspire the work. But I think the floor is completely open, and we will think of that. We have started the discussion already with Sylvie to see how we move forward to the group self-assessment.
Thank you, Bona. And with the support from Iman saying we should be very active, maybe that's the proposal coming from the field, that they all needs, and then we have tools and we can try to see how it fits together better. So yeah, there are ideas and innovations coming in, isn't it? More feedback, more comments or questions or ideas, please. Raise your hand, share views. This is totally open. Good. So maybe what we can do now is having our break. Can we join back in exactly 20 minutes for the second round of discussion, exchange, experience sharing? We will thank again, we are thanking again now Corita, Geneviève, Iman, and Bona for joining us. Please come back in 20 minutes and stay with us if you can. It will be much appreciated. So yeah, we can put the camera on for all those who wish to, and just say thank you very, very much. There will be a recap in written of this exchange, conversations, presentations, and we will share that with you. To everybody, please stay connected, be back at 20 past, and enjoy tea or coffee or a glass of water and come back fresh. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
We are back at 20 past, isn't it, Kuram?
Yes, we will be back at 20 past, and please stay connected. You can turn off your mic and turn off your camera. So we start in 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hi to you all. I will try to have an intervention on the level of the intervention this morning. I will try. And for the moment, I try to share. Do you see the screen?
You have to select your slides. Perfect. If you can put in presentation mode, Philip, this is fine.
Presentation mode. I don't know where is it.
Down right, you should have the diaporama.
No, I haven't.
Okay, then this is fine. Go on like this. It's okay.
Yeah, I will point. Okay. What I understand this morning, it was a very thank you for all the colleagues talking this morning. It was very, very interesting. What I will try to do in 10 minutes, like Sylvie asked me, which will be very difficult because I have a lot to say about. I will try to have some presentation more about the field and the technical aspect and the tools and the reason why the tools are like that and not in another form or something like that. When I came to the humanitarian field or world, that was the moment during which we was talking a lot about complaint process, because it's not so old, you know, to talk about these notions and complaint process, etc., etc. And like a lot of people, I began to go on internet, and what I say, it's around, I don't know, 200 complaint process and also 200 code of conduct. I decide to think about the system because my way was to try to integrate this notion in the mission. That means, you know, when you are observing all the field environment, it's the humanitarian movement. It's a universal movement with a lot of disparity, diversity, etc., etc. We have to answer to the problem of a lot of people with a lot of diversity, etc., etc. That means, and we are observed, but the rest of the world, which is composed also of a lot of diversity. That means it's a lot of diversities, and this answer has to be clear. And for that, we have to talk about standards. The standards we have through CHS, etc., etc. But that is more the mission side. Okay. Now we have to talk about the members of the team, the actors on the field. That means we have to talk about code of conduct, about complaint process. You understand? It's more on the level of the person working on the humanitarian field. And our code of conduct, the first, like I said, we decide to have the most simple code of conduct, because if you have a book or a booklet with 20 pages, I'm not sure everybody has time to read it. That means the code of conduct I talk about our system is 10 points, 10 sentences, not more. We are not. It's not something very new, because if you have the code of conduct of the Red Cross, it's based on the same system. And this code of conduct has the advantage to be clear, simple, and to communicative. That means this 10 sentence could be kind tool of communication, which is very important, because, you know, to be accepted, you have to be present. And that's it, important. Accepted, present. Donc, code of conduct, simple, clear, 10 sentence, built on universal value, that's it's normal. Okay. But a code of conduct alone, it's absolutely nothing. It's like a law. A law, it's nothing. You must have the tool to verify if the law are applied or not. That's it's logical. And for that reason, we have the complaint process. What the complaint process? The complaint process is to detect the bad comportment of some member of the humanitarian field, not only the team members. what has to be the code of conduct has to be, it has to give a fast response, to be transparent, protective, independent, and impartial. That is very important for the judgment. And that's one of the difficulty, the independency and impartiality. We have to, I don't enter in this type of debate because it could take days. Okay, that means we have the tools, but to apply that, you have some message to deliver, because, you know, it's not easy for some people to accept this tool. I will explain later why. It's for that reason, for me, the code of conduct and the complaint process, they are not here like a new control tool, like a new police or justice tool or something like that, but it's more a tool for prevention. Prevention against all abusive comportment, okay? And helping to integrate the values, the new values, such honesty, because you know that corruption, it's one of the problems we have to face in our life as humanitarian. Okay. Donc, I repeat, I resume. Code of conduct, simple, complaint process, reactive, fast, independent, impartial, and more than other. It's something to work in terms of prevention.
Maybe you want to move your slides. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Now that was, you know, we need tools. And I'm on the third place. Voila. Okay, now I will thank you very much. I'm talking, you see. And now I will talk about what's happened on the field most of the time. And I have a lot of discussion with the colleagues, because I'm a consultant for the Forum of Lebanese NGOs and leading the complaint committee on this forum. And I have a lot of contact with the NGOs, local NGOs, to apply it, to install this. And they have the most important difficulty is sometimes you have a problem because you are in the around some different conviction, different tradition. Sometimes the laws, you know that, for example, in Lebanon, the laws protecting the woman are not so developed than in other countries. And after that, you have to break the lack of confidentiality. You have to install a very strong system to protect the victim and the witnesses, because you must understand that in that it's a very important point. The complaints are not only coming from the victims, sometimes it's the witness. If you want something efficient, you have to protect also the witness. That means the confidentiality of the information concerning the person is very important to keep. And after that, you have, you know, I'm talking from the field, the most of the little NGOs are, some NGOs are built around a personality, a strong person, which is the director, which has position in the social society around. From that, this system could be interpreted like somewhere losing power or personality. That means all these things, all the difficulties has to be eliminated as possible. And you have, as focal point or at the initiative of this installation of these tools, to create a consensus. And it's very important to create a consensus in the team for a global acceptation of the system. If you want another time, I can talk really in detail on technical details how to obtain this consensus. That's it. When I talk with the people who would like to install that, I say the first things that you have to be, it's to be patient. You have to talk, you have to explain, you have to be clear, you have to all the time have come back to the reference of the humanitarian. You have to come back all the time to the standards, saying that it's necessary for us, for the movement, to be clear in front of the interlocutor, like the donors, to develop good relation, notably in partnership with the other organization, to develop good relation, clear relation based on humanitarian values with the, for example, providers, etc., etc. That's it. Very important. You have to explain, to have pedagogy. Your tools has to be very present, communicant, and very simple. That's what I would like to say you from my experience. I don't know if what I live here is a good experience. It's a success, but it's working because we receive a lot of complaints, and now it's integrate. We are in a phase of called integration. That means we evaluate the risk of misconduct on each kind of mission and job, and now we are working with MIL to evaluate to have a system to evaluate the impact of the code of conduct on the complaint process near the beneficiary. That's it. Do you have questions, please?
Philippe, thanks you very, very much for taking us from our ethics, the bigger hat of our humanitarian principles, into very concrete tools. Thank you for this, mentioning the complaints and feedback mechanisms. And you said, yeah, I think it works because we receive complaints. Thank you for this. Yes, it does work when we do get feedback and complaints. You mentioned being simple, and I really think this is key. Philippe, if you can please take the slides out. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. And I would like to just prolongate, give it a prolongation. You spoke about the complaints, and we have those complaints and feedback mechanisms. Feedback is also receiving information in a two-way communication mode, so that we can correct, with the support from monitoring and evaluation system and people, we can correct the project to adjust better the reality and maybe the change in the context, etc. This said, I would like to give the floor to our colleague Rizwan Iqbal, who is calling from Amman in Jordan. Rizwan is going to lead us through invaluable community engagement, linking very well with the discussion on the complaints and feedback mechanisms. Rizwan, you're an old colleague and friend from CWS Asia. You're now based in Mina, so you're the perfect bridge between those two regions. Thank you for being with us. We are listening to you, and I give you the floor. Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. I hope my slides are visible and you can hear me.
All good.
Okay, great, thanks. Greetings, everyone. I will share some of my experience and learnings around community engagement today. As Sylvie mentioned, that I'm working with ACT Alliance, and my key role is around quality and accountability. And through my experience, I've been working on different like emergency programs across Asia, and now I'm working in the Middle East. So I will share some of these experiences. So in principle, every one of us agrees to involve and engage communities in our work. But when it comes to the practice, many times it's not easy to do this due to various reasons. And but there are some tools that can help us to understand how we shall engage with communities, especially during the project cycle. So there are some main tools that I will also speak. And one of the main tools around this is core humanitarian standard. So I have only one slide on that that I will share with you. And here on the screen, you see that the core humanitarian standard, 9 areas that it focuses on are present. And these are the 9 quality criterions that are linked to the 9 commitments of the core humanitarian standard. And each commitment explains the expectations from the community. Here we have the requirements for organizations to put up systems, policies in place, and activities that staff should perform. And linking it with the community engagement, if we see the first commitment, that is around appropriate and relevant response, which is possible when we speak to the communities during needs assessment and consider their capacities and understand the priorities of women, men, persons with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups. So it's really important that we engage with the communities in the first stage when we are doing need assessment. And this first commitment is focusing very much on it. And the second commitment is around timely response. And here your organization's decision-making in a timely manner is very important, because you should have someone designated to monitor the process and ensure that to monitor that how you are doing in your programs. If there is any challenges or any gaps or any delays, then follow-up action should be taken by someone. If you have someone designated, if there is if in their job description it's mentioned, then you can take up the actions accordingly. And you always need to have resources. You need to allocate resources in your budgets to improve quality and accountability to affected population, as well as community engagement, because it does require resources to put in. Then going to the third commitment, which is around strengthening the local capacities and avoid negative effects. One of the aspects here is to consider the dividers and connectors within a community, because when you are going with any intervention, so then it can have like some good aspects, and it could also can affect them negatively as well. So meaning that which factors can bring communities together and which doesn't. So there is a detailed guidance and tools on this, that those were developed by a social scientist, Mary Anderson, and it emphasizes that when we are going to the communities, we need to consider the details of our interventions, that what we are doing, where we are doing, with whom we are doing, when we are doing, and then seeing how these interventions are affecting the connectors, and whether it's connecting the communities or it's dividing them. And then important here is also our staff behavior, which in the previous session, we speak about the code of conduct. So our staff behavior at this stage is equally important and could be a reason for connecting with the communities or dividing with the communities as well. And here on the screen, you see the fourth commitment, which is key to our topic that I'm presenting on community engagement. There are two things. One is participation. So our focus should be meaningful participation. Sometimes we are trying to make people participate, but forget about their safety. Here, it's important that when we are making them participate, then we consider their protection and dignity both at the same time, which also is one of the key principles that is highlighted by these FAIR standards, that people have the right to protection and security. Here, I would like to give you one example on Cash for Work without naming an organization that I heard that because they engaged communities in a scheme related to Cash for Work, but they didn't consider the safety. Someone from the someone in the community was engaged to help removing the rubble of a landslide, and then during that work, that person slipped down, and then from that, because the work was on a mountain, and then the death happened, unfortunately. But the organization didn't have health insurance for him. So it created a big problem. So when we are considering community engagement, then we should also consider the other aspects like the safety and these aspects as well, if they are involved in such work. On another side, like I want to share one good example on participation from the Philippines when I was deployed there after the Typhoon Haiyan, that it was also another cash for work project and community members were engaged in it. But the good thing that I really found is in that is that for older persons or pregnant women, they don't assign them the tough work. They ask them to like record the attendance, or they ask them to engage them in a work that is possible for them. So that is really important when we are working in our projects and things. We should consider this aspect as well. The second aspect of this fourth commitment is on communication, which is very, very important. And it starts from the very start of your project cycle and until end of the project cycle, communication is the key, and it's cross-cutting. So staff need to know, especially at all levels, but particularly at the field level, that what they need to communicate, how to communicate, and when to communicate. I remember that when I was working with in Community World Service Asia back in 2018, we used a theater performance in communities to share some important messages. So we can always think out of box and do things aside from conventional practices as well, so that we are better able to communicate to the communities. That will also ensure their better engagement. Here, one of the important thing that I want to mention is these days there is a lot of stress on the community's data protection, which is another important aspect for you to consider in the current era of social media and when everything is stored in computers or it's available online. So we are often using spreadsheets with community's personal information, so it should be stored in a safe way. There should be defined processes in the organizations that how to save files, how long you should store them, when to delete that data in case if there is any data safeguarding issues raised by communities or someone, then what is the mechanism to follow it? Internally within ACT Alliance Secretariat, we devised a community data safeguarding policy last year, and now we are trying to input it into practice from this year on. Then another thing that I supported in my organization is developing a guide on communicating with communities during the project cycle, which was based on previously we were finding challenges that staff may not know that, okay, what to share, when to share, how to share. So in order to address that, we think that this guide is very useful for the staff, and it gives contextual and specific information related to our organization that should be shared. I'm not going in depth of the remaining commitments, but you will find that they also help in seeking community engagement. For example, the complaints handling is very important, and for developing, it also gives chance to the communities to hold you accountable, and they can raise their concerns as well. And here it's also important that when you are setting up such systems, then you engage communities in developing those systems so that they are more effective. I would also emphasize again here to the CHS self-assessment tool, which is free of cost for any organization. I hear from the CHS colleagues. Last week I was speaking to Adrian from CHS Alliance, and they have revised this tool, and soon it will be available on their website, and it's free of cost. And later this year, they will also put up an online portal for easy analysis and use of this tool. And it's available for anyone, any organization can use it. And at ACT Alliance Secretariat, we are CHS certified, and in each audit, I think this really brings us different perspectives from the communities to further improve. It's independent audit, and it's good to know that how communities feel about our work, and the findings always challenge us. So if you want to do even CHS self-assessment tool, I think that will really help you to know that which things you need to focus further on. So I will now stop saying this, that this is an era of internet. We have a lot of access to many tools and resources, but it's very important that how we practice those tools related to community engagement and how we can contextualize them. And I always go and speak to the communities, use these tools, adopt these tools, and contextualize these tools. So I stop here. Good luck with your great work and doing that you're doing for the betterment of the communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rizwan. Thank you so much. It's going to be very hard to recap, so maybe I won't try that. You've linked up with all the commitments, with some of the tools and mechanisms. You mentioned the CHS self-assessment that we described together with Bona a bit earlier. So it's really good that we heard from you again how community engagement is key as an approach and cross-cutting all of the commitments. And I would like to, well, thank you again. Please stay with us. And now we will have Palveche bridging all those presentations with the topic of gender and empowerment. Palveche, you're a strong voice, a strong advocate on this. You're the communication manager with CWS Asia. And I thank you for being with us. Please share some of your findings, experiences. We are eager to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie, and thank you, Rizwan and Philippe, who was here before me on the panel. It was interesting to listen to all your insights and experiences. And so I'm here, I'm Palveche. I'm with Community World Service Asia. And my link with gender has been more, as in has strengthened the last couple of years since I've been working with the ACT Alliance on the Gender Justice Reference Group. Been more engaged in the process of ensuring mainstreaming gender within the organization and externally with partners. So talking about gender and empowerment as a critical aspect, all stages of our work, I think we can, all of us here can agree on the fact that gender is cross-cutting in most humanitarian quality and accountability work. It is essential for improvements in humanitarian accountability, and I think we all agree to that. And I think a lot of us in the humanitarian development sector are working very hard on ensuring that it is well mainstreamed. When I think Rizwan spoke about the core humanitarian standards, and I want to take that opportunity. I want to link that to the gender aspect as well. And it is a cornerstone of the core humanitarian standard. I believe my colleagues, our colleagues here from CHS Alliance will agree to that. In fact, the first commitment ensures that gender parity is reflected in its application. For example, when we design and implement appropriate programs based on impartial assessments of needs and risks, and an understanding of the vulnerabilities and capacities of different groups, especially keeping in mind gender groups. So, you know, just the first commitment of the CHS is talking about this. And so I think it's very, very relevant to the discussion that we're having here. Rizwan also touched upon the self-assessment tool, and I think Sylvie has also been talking about that with you all in the last couple of weeks. The core humanitarian standard self-assessment tool includes an aggregated indicator on gender to allow those measuring their application of the CHS to assess their performance specifically on gender. So there are tools, and this is just one of them, which is there for you all, which is available for you all to assess your performance on gender and how you're and whether it's well integrated in your programming and in all the activities that you're doing to ensure accountability to affected people. Here, I will also talk about some examples from our own context in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and how we apply them to implementing Q&A standards, because since the discussion here is mostly on quality and accountability, I want that link to be established and be clearer. But before that, before I go into examples, I also want to emphasize on the fact that women's security is strongly linked to the integrity of their rights. And that is what the core of the discussion has been since the last couple of days and weeks in this learning lab. Upholding the dignity of the people, ensuring their rights are upheld and are included in all processes. This is where we need to ensure that the gender aspect is well integrated in all our work, and especially ensuring quality of our work and accountability to affected people. As some of you might already be aware, that the Interagency Standing Committee has been working on this for a very, very long time. I think they started back in 2006 with a handbook on which was called Women, Girls, Boys and Men, Different Needs, Equal Opportunity, the Gender Handbook in Humanitarian Action. So that handbook is still available and you can refer to it. But this is, I mean, 2006, this is when it started, and this is, I mean, people were talking about it at that time. And now you have the 6 core principles of the IASC, which ensures protection or which tries to ensure protection from sexual exploitation and abuse. And that is also one important element of gender and empowerment, because, I mean, when it comes to safeguarding, you're making sure your women participants, your staff, they're protected and they feel safe, so they feel empowered. So it's all linked. So when we talk about specific examples from the field and in our context, I think when we talk about inclusion and participation, it's directly linked to women empowerment. What we have done in the past is that we've strengthened community structures at the community level to ensure women participation in household decision making, in informal decisions, as well as in leadership. So we've tried to do that. We've tried to ensure that women participants are part of these community structures, and in fact, they have leadership positions. So that is one thing that we've done. Then prioritization of women in humanitarian projects is something that we always do. I mean, prioritization of women-headed households, of widows, of single mothers, of young girls. So that is also one way of ensuring gender empowerment in projects. It is important to ensure that women and men are able to participate on equal terms in both formal and informal decision-making that way as well. And quality and accountability standards, if applied correctly, ensures that. Also, what we do, and I'm sure a lot of you also do that in your projects, in humanitarian as well as development projects, we recruit local women for projects, and this helps in strengthening the trust among communities, especially women. It also gives them inspiration to see one of them leading the projects locally. It also gives the community, a sense of it gives them, I think it motivates them, or it gives them more incentive. And obviously it kind of helps in establishing that trust and credibility. It also gives us opportunity to, get local inputs because, there's more freedom among women to talk to, local project managers and project officers and community mobilizers. So it kind of ensures that the needs of the people are well met, as well as that aspect of inclusion. In one of our women empowerment projects in Pakistan, we also created groups of gender activists from among the communities we were working with. And these included men and women and youth members, also some, elders of the village. And this was done to ensure that projects implemented are implemented in a conducive environment. It kind of ensured that, mindsets can be changed among leaders. It also engaged men from the community, this whole aspect of transformative masculinities. I mean, that can only be done if there's, the local communities are involved, and men are involved, and you engage with them in a systematic, strategic manner. So we did that through these gender activist group. We made these groups, and these groups are there. I think these were made in 2015, but they're still up and running and they're also part of other projects now. So this has been something that has really worked well for us to ensure gender equality, gender justice, gender mainstreaming in all our projects. Also helps us in ensuring accountability to people, because these structures are there now and they can help us they support us in mainstreaming that, whether it comes to safeguarding, whether it comes to community-based advocacy on certain things, or whether it comes to implementation of projects as well. And these were some of the few things which I really wanted to share. I don't have a presentation, but because I know that we've been discussing most of these things, gender, like I said, is cross-cutting in mostly all humanitarian standards. I think that what we need to do more is to kind of link it to in the day-to-day things that we do in all phases of the project cycle. And I hope that I was able to give you some good examples on that.
Thank you, Palveche. This was a presentation. Thank you very, very much. And for recalling the cross-cutting aspect, fundamental aspect, linking with community engagement, with the project cycle and gender, appearing at all levels. Thank you, Palveche. I'd like now to suggest that we get into smaller groups to discuss all what has been addressed and shared since the beginning of this session. So the idea is to get into small groups, and let me put here the slides. Thank you. And we'd like to discuss how does this all apply in your working context. So you're coming from very diverse, different places, context, type of work. How does this apply? All those topics we've been discussing since the beginning of the session are of interest to all of us. How do they apply, and what are the limitations and the opportunities, and what could be ways and maybe joint opportunities, joint actions for improvement? We would like you to take time in small groups to discuss in a safe small group and share experiences and debate a little bit on what you're doing and how it could be improved, what could be put in place so that there would be one step further down the application of the standards. And one suggestion here is to think about joint actions. Please do name a reporter for feedback, and we will share feedback from all the groups in plenary. We will be in the mixed groups facilitating. You have here a list on the right side of the slide, and we suggest we take 20 minutes to discuss and then share in plenary our examples, views, feedback. Please be brief for the feedback, but share key points when we meet again. Khurram, over to you, please, to organize the groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. We have a group of 5 to 6 people each. So you will be directed shortly to the groups, and I will try to paste the question in the chat box so you can see in the chat box the questions. So please join the group. I am opening the rooms. In group 1, we can use Arabic. And then Dina or Bashar, any one of you can share the discussion in the plenary. If anyone is facing problem, do let me know.
Khurram, I was sent to the group C, which were where like we already have Zainab and Jan was there. So whereas on the slide I was seeing that I should be with you in group 2. So can you put me in group 2 or
Sure, is one directing you to group 2.
Whatever we discussed in terms of gender, mainstreaming, core humanitarian standard, humanitarian principles.
Now you can go to group 2.
Anyone? Samreen, Dr. Nakibullah, Junyong, Shima, Fadi. Questions, please. Hello, Fadi, would you like to add something to it? Give some feedback on it?
जी जनाब बाकी ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं कर रहे हैं वेटिंग में ना लोग पता नहीं वो लगा के चले जाते हैं आगे पीछे वेटिंग में आ जाएंगे मैं भेज रहा हूँ उसको भेज रहा हूँ बस ठीक है ना ओके मैं भेज रहा हूँ लोगों को आपके पास ओके मैं आपको रिस्पॉन्ड करूँगी लोग भेजो Bashir, have you you haven't joined the group?
Hello.
Yes.
I'm sorry, my internet is cutting. I'm sorry.
Okay. Bashir, you have to join the group.
Yeah, I know. Welcome, all of you.
No, you are not in the main room now. Click on the breakout room, There you
Break
directed
room.
to,
Yeah,
break
yeah,
room,
yeah. Okay.
Then you go to the room.
I'm also a participant, so I like if someone.
Ilyas, Nusratullah. Are you there, Ilyas? Nusratullah, are you there?
दूसरे question क्या है?
Ilyas and Nusratullah, can you hear me?
Mm.
Hello. Khurram, please tell us when we are all back. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Sylvie. Just wait a few seconds. I will give you the floor.
Yes.
Wow,
Sylvie, we are back. Yeah.
Good.
Back to you.
Good. Thank you, Khurram. Hoping you had interesting discussions. Can we hear from the groups just a few minutes to share with us some of your ideas and outputs from the discussion? Quick feedback, and then we can comment. Please, few minutes. Who would like to start? You've named the reporter, sorry, for each group. So maybe we start with our group. Let's go on. Fadi, are you around, please?
Yes, I'm here. I'm around.
Over to you, Fadi. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, actually, we've been discussing about how to what extent the core humanitarian standards are applicable in our work, and how to make it more and more tangible when implementing humanitarian assistance projects, actually. So we were talking about having some kind of collective approach to implement these standards. Let's say at a national level, SJR could be a good initiative, actually, to establish this kind of bridge between several NGOs. Because we believe that in the Syrian context, we need more coordination between the humanitarian actors working on the ground. Another aspect that we've been discussing is to have some kind of unified reporting system, so that we can focus on the results of the report more than focusing on how to develop or how to write the report itself. We know how costly it could be to provide some reviews, annual reviews, quarterly reviews, or whatever. It costs a lot of financial resources, logistical resources, and human resources. So we believe that having some kind of unified reporting system could be very useful in terms of collecting data, merging data, and producing more accurate results. Another proposition was to have some kind of service mapping at the national level as well, so that everyone knows what the others do, so that we can design and plan more effective and efficient interventions. And forgive me if I missed something, Sylvie. I wasn't in the group for the first 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi. No, thank you so much for highlighting. You're saying collective self-assessment and using this as an opportunity to have a unified reporting system, at least maybe on the achievement of the commitments of the CHS. So that's an idea, proposal, maybe innovation. Let's see. Thank you, Fadi. And other group, please just raise your hand and you can take the floor. Amar, please, over to you. Thank you.
يعطيكم العافية. نحن رح نحكي عن فكرة المعوقات اللي هي بتواجهنا أثناء تنفيذ المشاريع، واللي هي من أهمها عدم ثقة المستفيد بجدوى الشكاوي اللي هو عم يتقدم فيها، وعدم وعي هذا المستفيد لحقه بهي الخدمة، بحيث أنه هو ممكن يعتبرها كنوع من الحسنة أو أنه هو غير مستحق لهاي الخدمة. بعدين خوف هذا المستفيد من حرمانه من هاي الخدمة في حال تقديمه لهاي الشكوى.
Thank you very much. Can we have the translation on Quran, please? And Bashir.
Yes, Dina can do the translation. Dina.
أنا عم بنطر الترجمة لكمل.
Thank you, Amar. We will look for the translation with Bashir.
Bashir, you have to switch to English, please. If Dina can do.
أنا ما سمعتكم مو في مترجم لأنه أنا ما انتبهت.
No, in English, you have to translate what Amar has said into English.
رح نرجع نعيد شوي شوي وبشير ممكن إذا كان أنت بدك تقوم بعملية الترجمة.
Bashir, can we please get the translation in English or with your support, Dina, please?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Bashir. Over to you.
شكرا بشير. هلا أول شيء الفكرة كنا عم نحكي عن المعوقات واللي لخصنا من الأفكار هي عدم ثقة المستفيد بجدوى الشكوى.
بس خليني نسجلهم. عدم ثقة المستفيد. أيوة.
بجدوى الشكوى المقدمة منه يعني.
أوكي.
بعدين عدم وعيه لحقه بهاي الخدمة.
أوكي.
وخوفه من حرمانه من هاي الخدمة في حال تقديمه لأي شكوى.
هاي الخدمة. أوكي.
طيب هلا في عنا شيء عن طريقة تحسين الخدمات المقدمة.
بس خلينا نحكي هدول.
تفضل لو سمحت.
Okay. Amar said about the limitations of the providing the service. Okay. They said that the first one, the non-trust of the beneficiary in the useful of the complaint provided by the beneficiary to the organization or the implementing organization on the ground. The second, lack of awareness in his right in having this service. The third, his fear about to this organization if they know about his complaint to take this right in providing the service to him.
Thank you, Bashir. Can I recap on the complaints and feedback mechanisms? It's about awareness raising, ensuring we communicate on the mechanism, but also using the information and responding to complaints. So
yes,
it's really...
Sorry, Sylvie, but Amar wanted to continue, I think.
Yes, thank you. Amar, over to you.
بشير أنا ديما.
ديما عفوا لا طالع على الشاشة قدامي اوكي.
عمار. لا هذا عمار نحن عم نحكي سوا. طيب هلا الفكرة الثانية هي عن طريقة تحسين أداء الخدمة من خلال مشاركة المجتمع المحلي باتخاذ القرارات، من خلال التواصل مع قادة هذا المجتمع أو من خلال التواصل مع المستفيدين.
من خلال التواصل مع
قادة المجتمع أو مع المستفيدين.
أوكي.
وإشراكهم باتخاذ القرارات وبالتنفيذ.
أوكي.
الفكرة الثانية اقتراح خط شكاوي.
أيوة.
وتعميمه على هذول المستفيدين.
إعلام المستفيد
بنتيجة
وإعلام المستفيد بنتيجة الشكوى اللي قدمها، متابعة هاي الشكوى يعني مع المستفيد.
أوكي.
طيب بعد في عنا تخصيص مساحات آمنة لهدول الأشخاص وزيادة عددها.
تخصيص مساحات آمنة.
إيه وخضوع العاملين الإنسانيين.
بس شو قصدك تخصيص مساحات آمنة للمستفيدين؟ يعني هي إذا بروتكشن
Bashir and Amar, thank you. Maybe we can get the point until now, and
Yeah,
then we will complement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dima said about the improvement of the performance, the service. She suggested that engagement the local community in making decisions through connecting with the key persons and beneficiaries, then engagement them in decision making. The second suggests of complaint mechanism and the mainstreaming on all the beneficiaries in the local community. Three, informing the beneficiaries about the result of this complaint. And the last, assigning safe spaces for these beneficiaries.
Thank you. May I suggest we stop here with the feedback from this group, mostly on complaints and feedback mechanisms and ensuring the community engagement, safety, confidentiality, and use of feedback and resolution of complaints. So thank you for emphasizing this point and for the translation here, Bashir. Can we go to next group, please? Who was reporter in another group?
Yeah, Sylvie, before going to first group, let me request Amar to switch back to Arabic translation, please.
Thank you, Kuram.
Yeah, and maybe next group can be Tuba.
Tuba, please.
Thank you. So the challenges that we discussed were around complaint response mechanism as well, and some challenge from Korea is that how the donor requirements can be overwhelming for the organizations, especially the local organizations who are not clear on the accountability terms and concepts to affected populations. So there's one challenge, and also the fact that the unfair selection of, there's a lot of complaint around unfair selection of beneficiaries and but which are also like it's an obstacle sometimes because of the tradition and the culture of the environment. The one thing that we discussed is that there needs to be consideration of the financial structure for humanitarian operations on the local level, and there needs to be planned integration of the need and the time and the job which the focal person who is handling the complaints built into the system, built into the program, built into the organization. It needs to given more importance in terms of the role and responsibility as well as the finance. We feel that while discussing it, we felt that there's no mostly in the local context, there are no focal persons, and it's a very financially could be burdensome for the or time-wise it could be burdensome for the organizations to have a person looking through it, and probably later if there's an investigation required to be have the capacity to investigate it. So these are the points that we discussed. Hopefully I'm not, also there was one feedback that sometimes language can be a barrier, can be a major barrier while the feedback and complaints are being made understand to the affected populations. But another solution for that is that there needs to be more input participation of the committees and the volunteers who from local communities who can bridge that gap. I hope I'm not missing anything. If anyone from my group want to add to it, they're most welcome to.
Thank you, Tuba. Thank you for emphasizing again contextualization and localization and having this discussion in your group. Do we have other reporters on board? Can you
Zena from your group?
Yes. Diab, please, over to you.
Thank you so much. Okay. In our group, we had a few thoughts about the difficulties we are having at the moment. One of the main problem is communication and the language barrier. Our colleagues told us about the Sphere handbook, for example, when it was in 2018. I'm sorry. It was translated, but many people didn't understand it. So the solution they got was to make a theater group, and they started to make different plays with different messages, and they went all around to spread these messages, which they are the Sphere handbook. Another thing, I'm sorry, I don't know if you are hearing me correctly.
Yes, we do. We do, please, Diab.
Okay, yeah. And another problem we are having is, for instance, in Syria, the language is not very appropriate here. It might be translated into political ways. People might think it's going into a political direction, and not that it's meant to help them. They will understand it wrong as much as we explain to them. Another point as well with it is that we try to communicate with them, we try to explain them, and to give them the right message. And in the moment they will get it, we will have a good implementation and a good results. But if we later on do study on the long term, these changes aren't that many and aren't that big because of the culture of the situations. Many programs that we are making aren't very, in the long term, aren't very helping, or the culture is still overwhelming and not giving the right, they're not getting the right ideas from us. Another point we've discussed is the fear from complaints. Many people have fear, like they complain, it might get few backlashes, they won't be able to get another benefits, another handout. And sometimes they fear that, okay, if I complain, it might not go to the right people, it might not, what's the use from it? They aren't sure that it is being implemented in the right way. For instance, in my organization, in GoPader, we have a CFRM unit, which is for complaints. We are currently working on opening a hotline, but we have complaint box and email and on Facebook. And the first step we do is we contact the beneficiary. We tell them that they are protected, their information will remain secret, and we are working on it. And we give them feedback as fast as possible. In our policy, it's 5 days, and we try within these 5 days to contact them and tell them that we've got a solution or we are working on it, and we give them results to see an actual result and make them believe in the complaint mechanism. Another thing that challenge, for instance, in Syria as well, is the interest by the people to only get the help, the benefit, the handouts. They're not really interested in changing or helping others. Some people are just looking for their own benefit. We try to do that. We try to help out, to raise awareness, to make people involved through focus group, through KIIs, and sometimes through one of the points you've said, which is to make people volunteer with us, to show them an example that you can involve, you can get, you can all to help them to get involved and to help spread the message through people like them, to get the message as much as possible and in the correct way that they will get it. But it's still work in progress. So these are the points. I'm sorry if I missed anything else.
Thank you, Diab. Thank you very much. And in a word, thank you for highlighting again the need for awareness raising. And and better accessibility, I would say, more than only translation, accessibility and understanding of those basic humanitarian principles and how the standards relate to this. And we have tools to implement quality and accountability, and what's the path forward towards this, no? Thank you very much. Do we have one more group to report and share findings? Yes, Lynn, please, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. In our group, we were talking about mainly ethics and principles. Since we're working with the most vulnerable group, it's very essential that we follow these ethics and principles through focusing on ensuring the dignity of the people that we're working with. For example, when we're working with local communities, it's important that we ensure, just for an example, that the photographs we're taking are ensuring the dignity of the people that we're working with. Now, what the challenges that we might face and which we can overcome is the safeguarding and protection, as depending on the context of the area that we're working with, there might be a lot of problems that could come up, and we can ensure that we refrain from these problems through community engagement. If we're ensuring the community engagement, periodic community engagement, we can ensure that we can overcome these obstacles that might come up. We can do that through using self-assessment tools and checklists. For example, the CHS self-assessment tool and community engagement checklist. We can use these tools to these should be used in a periodic sense, that we can identify the gaps if and when they come up. And we can also ensure the proper circulation of the Sphere Handbook, since it was translated in several languages. Proper circulation of the handbook could ensure that all team members in an organization or a project are following the proper principles we need to ensure the proper and the effectiveness of our work. We also mentioned when talking about the gender aspect, we also mentioned that there are a lot of organizations that don't actually have a standard gender policy or strategy, and we can start by ensuring that there are gender policies in place that are being taken, starting with the gender assessment, and to ensure that the gender marker is being exercised properly to ensure the coverage of the gender aspect. We also mentioned something about the disaster management plan, that we need to engage community members in disaster management plan to help them be resilient and to be able to mitigate for any disasters that might come up, as communities should be considered major stakeholders in the planning phase for this disaster management plan, and to keep this updated even after the planning phase, in the implementation phase, to stick to community consultation in order to ensure the proper engagement of the communities in our work. If I've missed anything, please can someone from my group help me?
So much for recalling, the application of principles and ethics, and ending up with again stating the phases of the project cycle, isn't it? And how it should appear. Mostly you were mentioning the planning phase. Am I right to say, Kuran, that we've heard back from all groups?
Yes, Sylvie.
Yes, good.
Yes.
So I would like to recap here. We've heard a lot of things around those key topics. We've had a lot of feedback, views, ideas around doing no harm at the beginning of this session, and capacity building and learning. We heard a lot now on awareness raising, strengthening local capacities on quality and accountability, linking with all our awareness raising approaches and activities. Localization and equitable partnerships is key and is still to be developed beyond the buzzword. No, what are we really doing truly? The CHS verification scheme was introduced to us with an interesting note on the self-assessment, and maybe the possibility to have this collective approach to it, and ensuring that we have unified reporting and work collectively into assessing the situation, recognizing where we have gaps, and agreeing on what could be joint improvement plans that then would cascade at organizational level. Applying ethics and principles is coming back at all points, and this is really good. This is where we have added value. This is where we do reaffirm our humanitarian principles. And there is probably a door opened for joint advocacy, using those commitments we have through the CHS and ensuring that by having a joint assessment process, we can advocate better together to different type of actors. Community engagement, gender are key aspects. We need to consider cross-cutting at all points. It could be that a joint self-assessment, or at least using those indicators from the CHS assessment related to community engagement, to gender, could help us show us better where we are at and what we still need to do to truly improve these aspects. Finally, yes, joint and collective application. Do we want to work at organizational level, or do we have opportunities like the Syria Joint Response Consortium, the work done by Community World Service Asia at regional and national levels? Can we use those initiatives to better work together on showing how we are implementing the commitments and what is to be done to improve this work? Finally, I'd like to recall that, yes, we do work through the cycle, the project cycle, the program cycle at organizational or collective level. But there is this red, phase called learning and preparedness. Back to getting ready and learning is as important as implementing. And we've been discussing this thoroughly. So this is a recap, and I'd like to maybe wrap up here. Open the floor if there is any voice, any comment, any point you would like to add to complement before we get into closing this session, which was really intense but so interesting. Please do raise your hand if you want to add on anything. Do we have our heads full enough with all those ideas and experience sharing and points? Samarin, please come in.
Thanks, Sylvie. It was a really nice sessions what we got. I just wanted to share one experience of mine. I have been the part of CHS self-assessment from the FRDP sides. I was leading the whole assessment. I was focal point. So what I faced, there was a difficulty that the tools were online basically, and for the communities it was in English. So mostly communities in Pakistan don't understand English, and our interventions when we talk about the very interior sites, they are desert sites, so they were not having the connectivity of mobile, so the internet it was just out of question. So we were just facing those difficulties as well during the self-assessment. So I just wanted to make them realize that in other hand, we had to make them more like friendly for those areas as well. The self-assessment tools can be like on hand, or maybe we could make the offline tools for those specific areas. We can hire more translators for those communities, so it can be helpful for other organizations as well. It is just a suggestion to CHS Alliance. Like, I just wanted to share this difficulty that I faced. Thank you.
Samarin, thank you so much. It is really important that we are realistic in terms of what means going through a self-assessment and what it entails in terms of workload, but also in terms of necessary contextualization. Rizwan was mentioning to us just before in the group that he had, for the verification, he had to gather about 800 documents. You need to have specific people, focal points, as you were, Samrin, working on it and being dedicated to it. So is that feasible or not? Is something to be discussed up front? Yeah, thank you for your contribution. Anyone else wants to contribute on this? Or shall we maybe keep this as the final word to close this session? And this will lead us into our next session with participants from Asia and Syria. And the next session on Thursday is called Clinic. In this process, now we want to shift into, fine, we've been discussing, we're on the same page regarding the CHS and its the application of standards on quality and accountability, safeguarding. Now, what is it clearly that we want to work out? What are our priorities? Is it at organizational level? Is it at collective level? Can we start to define better what we want to work out? Because we see it can be a big machine and maybe we do not have all the resources for that. So this will be the next session on Thursday. Meanwhile, we're going to close here today. And I would like to thank very, very much all the panelists, the team from Community World Service Asia and from ZOA, coordinating the Syria joint response, including the translator with us today. I would like to thank all the participants. It was an intense session, but we had a lot of discussion. So you can put the camera on and we can take a picture. Normally we would do this in the back of the workshop room, but maybe that's a good replacement. Thank you, everybody. We hope this was useful, interesting, and we will make sure that we continue the discussions all together on Thursday. So good lunch, good dinner, good coffee, tea, wherever you are in your day. And thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.